Hi, I'm Ken Smith. I'm here with film director Ann Hui. And Ann, I don't think I ever told you this, but I think you're the fourth person I met when I went to Hong Kong.
Oh,
And you're the first person that is not actually an in-law of mine. So
oh.
that was very good. We met at the open day at Hong Kong University, and I think that was very appropriate for me anyway, because my entire education about Hong Kong to that point had come through watching Cantonese films.
Really?
I had seen
Oh,
about 200 films in the year and a half before I got there. And before I got on the ground, I knew the Hong Kong experience as in the 1980s and 90s as being something with this recurring search for identity. Who are
mm,
we as a city and as a people? And films like Summer Snow and Song of the Exile had particularly explored that and particularly hit hard for me with that type of question. So now, after seeing Keep Rolling, I think we all know that this is not a fluke, and that you were actually describing Hong Kong, the relationship among Hong Kongers as a connection of refugees. And,
mm.
and I found that very interesting. And another interview subject had another great line. It was most of your characters are loners struggling at the crossroads of history.
Oh, who said that?
And I found that very, very, very touching and very poignant. You had said you were very committed to making films about Hong Kong people, and over the course of 30 films now, you've charted that the evolution of a city, of a place, of a people. And can you just summarize for us right now what Hong Kong has meant to you over the past decades?
It changed very much. I mean, like when we were young, we were completely apolitical because our parents and schools do not encourage us to think about politics. Because most of the people who came to Hong Kong were refugees from China. Uh, and so they knew what politics is about. And they teach their children to eschew politics so that they will be out of trouble. And we actually, because I was born in 1947 and I came to Hong Kong in 1952, um, my father sent me to an English school, teaching in English, run by a nuns, French nuns, actually. So we were discouraged, and of course, the colonial government discouraged us as well, because we're actually not allowed to have a say in politics in Hong Kong, especially in the 50s and the 60s. Uh, we really didn't talk about it, and I actually I didn't know. But then during university, there was this 1967, how you call it, insurrection, revolution, unrest by the leftist party in Hong Kong, and I was rudely shaken up to politics, especially in the 60s. There was Vietnam. Uh, there was revolution all over the world by students. I was completely caught by the imagery at that time. I mean, mostly in time and life, because that was days before the internet. So I was very taken, but I didn't involve because I was, how do you call it, thought I wasn't good enough or that kind of thing. Uh, Most of my classmates in university joined, especially those who were intelligent and good in their studies. That was the wave of, how do you call it, a kind of political awakening. But in 1967, in early 70s, we were very, how do you call it, vague about what's happening in China.
Mm.
But before I went to study in London, um, I, I went to Canton to visit my grandparents, which was sort of scripted in Song of the Exile. And that was another rude awakening because it was so terrible. It was already in 1970 because the streets were empty of people or shops. And nights there were no lights and really nothing to eat. And I think I went with a few of my classmates. And when we came out of Lowu, we were screaming with joy and immediately went to a restaurant and had a colossal meal of dim sum. And for about 3 months after the trip, I never left anything on my plate after dinner. But I mean, gradually I went back to old ways. So, so that was this. And basically in the 60s, actually, most of the people in Hong Kong are thinking of emigrating. My classmates in the convent school, they all had, they were all consulates' daughters, and so, or some well-to-do people who came from China, and they were thinking of sending their daughters abroad. So ever since high school, you know, in matriculation, we were seeing waves and waves of classmates going off on ships, on airplanes to the States to study and settle there. In fact, lots of my secondary school classmates settled in, and we were always thinking of going abroad, in fact, like a lot of people in Taiwan. So, and actually, I did not think much of Hong Kong because, like all colonial people, we sort of feel that everything is second rate here. Like we speak an adopted language, and when we write or read the classics in English literature, in which subject I mean, I studied the subject. I knew that we were not good enough, you know, in the language. And because I studied in an English school, I felt that my Chinese wasn't good enough either. So it's a kind of how do you call it, quandary, feeling nobody likes to feel second rate.
Well, it's interesting
and,
because yeah,
and doomed to be second rate. And then gradually, since the 90s or the 80s, starting from the 80s, I mean, everybody knows that there is a kind of cultural awakening and boom in the Hong Kong identity. And then people begin to be proud of being Hong Kongers and trying to excavate their origins. And I mean, at first, I didn't go with it. I mean, I'm sort of a kind of, how do you call it, observer of the proceedings and thinking about it much rather than siding with it. Even now, I'm not a Hong Kong chauvinist. But of course, I mean, since the last few years, of course, I'm much more involved because I'm how do you call it? I feel that I have a duty to record some Hong Kong history. But before, as you know, in my 40 years of career of making films, making do and trying to survive has been my main task. So it's not a conscious effort to record Hong Kong history. It's somehow, I mean, I did it because I was unaware, or especially unless it's for a film like Song of the Exile, when you can't help thinking about your identity. But in other films, I'm not exceptionally dealing with the subject or trying consciously to deal with the subject.
Now, interestingly enough, I mean, you're talking about that early period of your life where that was not so pro Hong Kong, and a little bit later in the 80s and onward that you felt drawn to Hong Kong as a subject. That right in between there, smack in there, is that little thing called the Hong Kong New Wave, which it's interesting to look back, because to look at you and other directors like Choi Hak and Yim Ho, who were part of that in the vanguard of the Hong Kong New Wave cinema. It's very hard to put your movies together with theirs as a single category. And it probably was, but even back in the early 80s. So can you take us back there and give some context to people who maybe don't know so much about the period of cinema and culture at that point, and tell us, what did you share as members of the New Wave? What, other than, say, not Shaw Brothers, did and yes, and most of us had got education abroad. What did you share as part of the New Wave?
Actually, it's technique.
Mm.
More than a cultural identity or a common sort of theme. Technique is because of our origins. Like most of us came back from abroad, having been in maybe the first generation of people who went to film school in Hong Kong. Before that, there was only Baptist College in Hong Kong, which has a communications department and a very rough not film school, film department. So maybe every year in Hong Kong, there's only about less than 10 people who knew about films. And we were the first people, because I went to London Film School in 1971, and the other directors like Fong Yuk Ping, Alan Fong, and Choi Hak, and variously, they went to study film in either the States, or I studied in London because it was cheaper. so when we came back, we all went to television. Because the television in 1967, TVB opened, and it recruited a lot of us there as cheap labor. But then we had all these basic knowledge in filmmaking, and then of course we watched lots of films in film school. So we were sort of thinking about, not we, but when we talked, we would think, and we would I was, and I mean, it's very strange because most of us were assigned realist topics. Like we were assigned to do a series on the CID, that is one of the police department. And so we had to do research on real cases, go down to the streets, and then we were filming in film for the first time in TVB. And in RTHK, they were also doing films too for Alan Fong for the second series of Below the Line Rock. So we were looking for cases and stories which happened in the streets, but that was assigned to us. But we got to like it very much. And the common thing was that we were shooting on location, which was different from shooting in studios. We were doing how to call it, sound, which was recorded instead of being dubbed, and then we were doing realist subjects. But that's not an ideology or a common sort of a kind of common understanding. But we were doing because the circumstances at that time. Maybe the only conscious person is Patrick, because he was the head of the film department, not film department, the film section in TVB. And I remember very clearly that one day when King Hu got the technical prize in Cannes in 1975, that was a great furore because it's the first time Hong Kong got any substantial prize in the big festival. And Patrick and I were doing a special short on TVB, and I was sort of very happy and sort of very proud. But Patrick just told me, "We're not going to do that. We're going to do something different. We're going to do contemporary subjects." That's what he said. And I was just thinking, you're real proud. I never thought we would get a prize like King Hu. So yeah, that's exactly what we went through.
It's interesting too, because to look at the output that you have, a lot of times yes, obviously the technique of shooting basically as you move. I mean, there's a lot of handheld stuff. There was a lot of documentary type of approach that comes into your work, but also some of the subject matters. It's interesting too because you have what you could look through large parts of your career as multiple miniseries because you have, of course, the Vietnamese trilogy, which the story of Wu Viet and Boat People are being shown as part of this festival. But the first segment, from Vietnam, from Beneath the Lion Rock, that is considered part of that really sort of launched that in a way. You also have a trilogy of stories from Eileen Chang that have come out at various times in your career. You have a ghost story double bill between Spooky Bunch and Visible Secret. You've got Summer Snow and July Rhapsody, which are Woman at 40, Man at 40. And are these type of things in a way also something that comes out of television as taking a look at multiple chapters or multiple times returning to your subject at a different time with a different perspective?
No, it's not entirely that reason. You see, like when you are in the middle of things, and when you look back, it's a different story.
Okay.
When you're in the middle of things, I was just thinking about the next job because I need to earn money,
Mhm.
and so I got some offers, and then I say which one I would reject and which one I think I can do. Or they usually don't have a script, but they have a subject or they have a cast. And I have some stories. There are some stories I want to do very much, and there are some stories which I think I can do. So sometimes I do stories which I think I can do, and sometimes I do stories which I want to do very much. Like so it's that kind of feeling. And so when I was doing Visible Secret in 2001, the conscious the idea then, I just came out of teaching 2 years in college, and I saw that in 2001 the film industry was really bad. So I thought my first duty is to try to do a film which would sell.
Mm.
And I went through the various genres, uh, and I thought that ghost story would be the best because ghost stories are usually low budget, and if you don't do too much, how do you call it, special effects, it's cheap, and usually they have a substantial amount of audience. And if you make it very well, it might very well be a hit. So I went ahead and do it, starting with an idea that I want to do a ghost story instead of like some of the stories like how do you call it, uh, uh, Summer Snow is one story I really want to do, and I proposed it to the boss.
Mhm.
It's different.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting too because when you talk about genre films, okay, one of the things, not just topics that keep recurring, sometimes some of the same actors do too. And this you've done uh, both with Chow Yun-fat and with Andy Lau. You've made 3 films, and 2 of those films with Chow Yun-fat could look on paper as genre films. Wu Viet could be a triad film, and in a way, it kind of presages some of the films that Mr. Chow was famous for throughout his career. Postmodern Life of My Aunt is a strange, quirky, romantic comedy in a way, but yet transcends that with very different elements. Um, between in those 15 years between those films, you changed very much. Chow Yun-fat changed quite a bit in his terms of his career, and Hong Kong changed a lot. Could you talk a little bit about the differences between making that the first film and then the second film?
With trying that,
Yeah, yeah. The differences of everything that had changed, because I think some of the changes in your life and his represented Hong Kong as well.
um, when we were shooting Vuvet, he was starting off his career in filmmaking. He's made a few very bad films before. before Wu Viet, he said he announced that it was completely for money. It's sort of and and then he was in TVB, and then I had moved there, and I was thinking, asking him to do the film, and he was very excited, and then in fact he defied TVB to shoot the movie. I think the details I forgot, but anyway, he made a big effort, and I felt how do you call it? So stressed because of the the favor I owe him for doing. In anyway, when he was shooting Wu Viet, I mean, everybody by that time knew that he was a very good actor. In terms of his body language, his looks, the way he is involved in a character, his expressiveness, everything. And then he works very hard, but at the same time, he's very, very nice to everybody on set. Like when we were shooting Wu Viet, most of us were, the crew was living in two flats. I mean, these short-term flats. And then every day, maybe if he's not working with low layer, they will go to the market and buy food and come back and cook for everybody.
Wow.
You won't believe it.
Anyway, he wasn't doing that 15 years later.
But he doesn't cook anymore. But he invited the crew every Friday or Saturday weekend for snacks after the shoot. I mean, a kind of a routine. I mean, he was like that still.
Yeah.
But he said very little about the script, and he just did what was required by the script and what I said. I mean, but in 2007, when we were shooting Postmodern Life, we showed Terence the script and asked whether maybe he might be interested, because at that time he shot a number of films in Hollywood, and we could not afford his pay at all. And Terence came back positive and said he was interested and he liked the script and the character. And then afterwards, things were very smooth. So he asked me to come out and to discuss the script. He's read the script, and then he said, don't change the script because he likes the script. And he was talking a lot about the scripting, and talking a lot about how he would portray the character, like being in a comic and showing me maybe some snaps of what he would like to wear, like the swimsuit. He wanted to wear a swimsuit instead of swimming trunks. And maybe he said he should have mustache and all that kind of thing. And then, especially with the way the character is portrayed, and the whole idea of the basic tone of the film, he has a grasp of that. He had a feeling that this tone of the film is the most original thing about the script, which is, it's not a romantic comedy. It's not a drama. It's something. It's sometimes fantastic. That kind of feeling, and he liked that, which is so he has become from an actor. He has become some kind of a producer.
Yes.
He can easily sort of manage the whole idea of the story. I wasn't surprised because, but I was of course very impressed and very pleased.
Yeah. What was the general film world like in Hong Kong between those years, between 1981 and 2007? Again, it was an entirely different world, it seemed to be.
This Postmodern Life was actually China production, a completely China money by an independent investor who was interested in art films. And the script writer I got to know when I was doing post-production of The Jade Goddess in Beijing. And so, but because they because the boss, the investor, was also some kind of a literary fanatic. I mean, she read maybe 7 books, and she's a writer herself. She did these talk shows for CCTV, and but her ambition was to be a writer, so she actually wrote a lot of books. So her interest in films and her perception is obviously not like the other investors, mainly for money. In fact, she lost money in the investment of this film. Uh, I think we in Hong Kong, most people started maybe going to China for shooting prospects starting from 2000. Yeah. Uh, and before that, in 1980, when I was shooting movie, it was a kind of the world I worked in were independent filmmakers. Like maybe they make one film and then they finish. We don't even have an office. I mean, like Wuvet was the investor of Wuvet was dealing in curtains, Pearl City, but they made a number of films afterwards. And actually, they made Stanley Kwan's first film. Yeah, yeah, and a number of films by Zhang Gokming. What's his name? The other new wave director. So we were traveling from place to place, and we have our files in our big bags. So we still retain this habit of carrying our files everywhere. Because we don't sit down for an office. I mean, we go to any office and then just work there, and then we leave, and then maybe lots of people said, especially these groups of filmmakers in the 80s, the new wave, they said they would start a co-op and then announced that they would make 10 films for in the next 3 years with 3 directors. But they only always managed to make one. I don't know why I didn't interview them. And I don't want to be cynical about others, but it's obvious that maybe it's difficult to work together on something which involves a lot of interests and finances. Because if you can talk about your ideals for ages, but then the moment you settle down to pay and then chances of work, there will inevitably be conflicts. It's actually regrettable. I mean, but then I do not blame them, or because I didn't join because I felt the reality would be like this, that there will be inevitable conflict, unsolvable conflicts, because you are on a platform of idealism, that is like everybody is equal. And with that, you can't very well work for films, because it's like you need a kind of artistic leader in a film, and you need a kind of production leader. Otherwise, things will go, how do you call it, will become quite chaotic.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I like the way that you had put that earlier about making the films that you want to make. When I started out in writing and working on those kind of projects, I always say, well, I take the gig that that will pay the bills, and then you move into projects that you can shape. A lot of people can do it, but you can shape it in a particular way, and then you reach the final level that you do the work that really only you would do. And that you would be the stuff that you were put on earth to do, and if you want to put it that way. And there are times that I look through and see such personal touches from you in your work. One of the things about Keep Rolling in the documentary is the juxtaposition of these personal details from your history, from your life story, and then how it goes and has worked its way onto the screen. Now, that's obvious in something like Song of the Exile, because that story is overtly about your relationship with your mother. But there were a lot of other scenes where you would be talking to your doctor, and then all of a sudden there's a man talking to a nurse about primary care. All of these things happen. Did you have this as a conscious part of your process, or was it still a surprise to you when you saw that on the screen?
What process?
No, a part of working your own history and your own details into.
No, I think that's inevitable with lots of directors. Not unless they deliberately don't want their own life or character to appear, but in whatever fugitive form, it's inevitable. I mean, even if your life experience is not, it can be avoided, or you do not consciously present your life experience, but then it's inevitable that you see what kind of personality that a filmmaker has. Because especially if you've made a number of films, you can't help repeating your motif.
Yes. Was it a surprise when you saw those put together all at once, or did you say, well, of course I do that?
Yeah, but maybe they miss some of the less positive aspects of my character. But I won't go through that.
Several.
Sorry.
Sorry.
I have something to add. When I was thinking about this, how do you call it? This profession, I've been actually really seriously thinking about two aspects, especially pertaining to your interests and your economics. It's like because a director is, how do you call it? You cannot divide your interests from the interests of the film you are making. I mean, no matter how, because the success of the film, at least until now, means everything to a director. She will get money, she will get reputation, she will get everything. And it's difficult to really be objectively trying to do your job and not try to get more. How do you mean it? I mean, I sometimes you see like making films is really, you sometimes are tough on others, like making them cut their pay and that kind of thing. and how do you reconcile that with being a sort of, how do you call it, averaging moral person? So I thought, oh, maybe what I should do is that I should try to make a limit to my interests. That is, I won't try to earn more than I feel the project can allow, and just maybe enough for my own living, instead of trying to make a hell of a lot of and making more and more like some people in the industry. I don't mind. I mean, what they're doing is not my affair. But I was thinking I have to be very clear about this to myself, what you are doing. And I mean, you can't keep saying you're doing it for film art, whereas you're doing it for yourself. I mean, although these two cannot be divided. What I mean is you divide the spoils fairly.
Yes. Several people in this documentary have noted that you're very much a loner. Now that kind of runs against what you were talking about now, which is a very collaborative type of process. But in terms of a lot of the interactions, you very much are inwardly focused, and yet you have had a tremendous influence on a lot of filmmakers in Hong Kong. Now, given that where you've come from, out of television, out of TVB, RTHK, those opportunities as a training ground don't really exist anymore in the same way that they did for you. So for young filmmakers who are coming up who want to continue this socially conscious dialogue, how would you advise them to move forward?
I mean, I've often said that I can't give good advice because I don't know the way they live. And I'm not sure I know, especially on the net, the kind of community there.
Mhm.
And it works on completely different set of dynamics. It's like things happen instantaneously instead of gradually.
Mhm.
I mean, you can immediately become world famous. Before it was unthinkable. And you can achieve so much in maybe a year because the technical expertise at your fingertips are tremendous. And if you know how to do it, then it's very fast. You can do a big production and and especially with collaborative effort. And nowadays, I think collaborative effort is the norm. And working with other people is different. I mean, in 60s, 70s, like I know because I'm very conscious of the change in our technical apparatus and in a way with how society, I'm conscious of the change. That's why I can make films until today. And even now, ever since I was 40, even my friends told me I should retire because the society is different, you know. So I think if I try to give advice, people will listen at most politely. But I think if they take it, if they really accept it, it might not work for them. For one thing, the young people, the world the young people are facing are so different. And secondly, their individual problems are different as well. So if I say in a general way, oh, you should do this, I feel it doesn't work. Uh, and so I try not to say, but they feel that I'm trying to save up for myself. It really is not that, and it's so easy to give very glib advice to people, especially people who are old. You know, like you should do this, you shouldn't do that. Like my mom, you know.
Well, one thing you cannot stop making films now. You can't, because one of the wonderful bits of in Keep Rolling was when you were comparing yourself to Bergman and saying, well, Bergman made 3 films by my age, and what have I been doing? And so I did the math, and you have 15 more films before you catch up.
Yeah, we do that. It's our kind of how do you call it, astrology games. You know, like who's made how many films before they die? But it's a game. I mean, I know very well. It's not like that. The reality is that you should stop making films when you feel you don't want to, and you should keep making films when you feel you can still do it.
Okay, and you are going to continue, I hope?
I haven't, I'm still thinking. Maybe not feature films. It would be very, very difficult, but maybe other kinds of films.
Okay, that's very good.
Especially short films.
Very good, very good. Well, thank you for spending time with us, and we greatly appreciate it. Again, it's film director Ann Hui. Congratulations.
So nice.
Congratulations on your award, and we hope for the next film and 14 more.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.